So, um, lately I've been doing a lot of these, well, not a lot, but some of these inside the box videos, where I just open up sometimes an old game, sometimes a newer game, and go through the contents. There's a lot of unboxing videos on Board Game Geek. The general opinion of these unboxing videos is that they're by and large useless. People would rather see how the games are played, or tutorials or AARs or things like that. But one thing I've kind of enjoyed doing when I do these unboxing videos is to do older games that either don't have any video coverage on Board Game Geek, or that don't have a lot of pictures or information on what these games look like out of the box and unpunched. Of course, the real trick is finding unpunched copies of old games. And so, doing an unboxing video tends to lose a lot if you're pulling out bag after bag of counters, punched counters or clipped counters, or counter trays full of counters. Because that doesn't give a sense of what the game was packaged like, or what it was like when it was new out of the box. And so for these older games, it's just kind of a rare opportunity to commit to film something that is very finite. These older games, finding unpunched copies of some of them can be difficult and or cost prohibitive. And eventually there will be a time when there's no more unpunched copies of these older games left. So I just feel this a little bit of historical impetus, I guess, to do these older games when I come across unpunched copies. And I haven't done it with all of the unpunched older games that I have. I did, I think, a video for Hitler's War when I got that. That was unpunched. I did one of these for Rebel Sabers, which is another, early 80s. That was an SPI era game. And I had an unpunched copy of that. I've had some other older games that I didn't do inside the box videos of before I ended up taking the counters out and punching them. I think Grant Takes Command was one of them, and that was not very old. That's only 13 or 14 years old, but is sort of a weird era of MMP. It was, I think, one of the first MMP branded games shortly after MMP was formed. But while the great campaigns of the American Civil War were still tied to Avalon Hill, so you can see it's got both logos on there, Avalon Hill and MMP. And I think the current volumes of the series actually have Hasbro logos on there too, have Avalon Hill and Hasbro logos now on them, which is really strange. But this one would have been interesting to do an unboxing of at the time. Of course, I've since punched all the counters and I've played it several times, but it would have been a good one to do because just because of its unique place in wargaming history and sort of this interim period between MMP coming into its own and Avalon Hill shutting their doors, essentially. So that one would have been a good opportunity to do a sort of inside the box video on. Most of the other older games that I have, VG's Civil War, they were mostly all purchased, punched already. So, or I guess another candidate would have been the old SPI Armada game there, or Empires of the Middle Ages, certainly. But I didn't have unpunched copies of those. I do have, sitting over there, an unpunched copy of Magic Realm, which I'll probably do one of these videos for, just because that game has sort of a cult status to it, and it has a lot of contents too. So, sort of documenting on film a unboxing video of it, I think could be helpful to people or useful in some way, other than just some idiot babbling over tearing shrink wrap off of a box, which is usually what my unboxing videos look like. So in this case today I'm doing a look at Wellington's Victory. This is the TSR reprint of the original SPI, the Battle of Waterloo game. And surprisingly, there's not a lot of grand tactical games on Waterloo. I think Labatt did some element of Waterloo. I don't know if there's a Labattaya full-on Waterloo grand tactical game. I think it might be several games that you sort of piece together that were part of the Waterloo campaign, but I could be totally wrong there. My knowledge of Labatt extends to Borodino, the Labattaya de la Moscova, which I'm playing right now. I have not played any of the other games. All I know is that they're hard to find and typically expensive. So, Wellington's Victory. This version it's not difficult to find. Finding an unpunched copy a little bit harder, but because it's part of that TSR SPI imprint, it tends not to fetch the prices that older SPI games fetch, or especially the old SPI monster games or the soapbox games. Those tend to sell north of $100 usually. You might get lucky and find them in the 80. Get lucky and find one on eBay or something in the $80 range. Probably not going to be unpunched in that condition. Unpunched, you're going to be looking over $100 for most of them. So they depend on condition. This one I got really fortunate to find a really good price through Board Game Geek. I had bid on an auction for a copy of this, and I got outbid, not by too much. I was looking to find it for a fairly low price, and so didn't intend to pay a lot for it. So I got outbid fairly easily, but I had a really friendly fellow grognard on Board Game Geek contacted me and said, "Hey, I saw you lost the auction. I've got an unpunched copy. If you want, I'll sell it to you for close to the price that you were willing to pay on the auction," which is really great. Just a great community. That there's people like that look out for fellow gamers that are trying to get new games out there to play, to add to their collection or to experience. So we worked out a deal, and I got a unpunched copy of Wellington's Victory. A little bit of damage on the box. You can see looks like somebody may have set something heavy on this, and it didn't actually split the corner, but it sort of tore out the top corner here. So I've got some surefire box repair techniques that should be pretty easy for this. Usually I use it for split corners, but the same principle would apply. Fixing this corner here, what you end up doing is get some acid-free glue or some bookbinder's glue, a couple of Q-tips, and you just run a line of glue along your corner there. Take the Q-tips to smooth it out. And then I'll put some glue underneath where the paper is peeled away here. And same thing, just 2 Q-tips along the outside. And it turns it visible after it dries and very solid. So it's hard to even tell that the split was ever there. This will be a little more visible, obviously, because the tearing will be hard to hide. But the glue will pull it down so it won't worsen it any further. If you've watched any of my other unboxing videos, I love to ramble on about wargame cover art. This is no different here. This is from that SPI, from the TSR era of SPI games, where all the artwork, I think, and I know it is the case for this particular cover. I don't know for the other TSR type covers, and I've only got one other example to show, which I did an unboxing of, and that was Rebel Sabers. Which has that sort of, again, vaguely cartoonish artwork on the cover. This is more cartoonish in particular than the Wellington's Victory, which I would consider not quite so cartoonish, although very comic booky, I guess, in terms of color. There's all of the TSR games of this era, which was the sort of mid to early to mid 80s, had this type of artwork on the covers for all of their SPI reprints or even new issued games that they did. All had very similar artwork. And I don't know if they did it on the other ones. I don't recognize the name on the Ribble Sabers artwork, which was Doug Chaffee. Well, it's a vaguely familiar name, Doug Chaffee, but I don't remember him from the TSR era of Dungeons and Dragons. But this artwork was done by Jeff Easley, as you can see here on the back. Jeff Easley, illustrator. And Jeff Easley is kind of a legendary name in Dungeons and Dragons lore. He did a lot of the early TSR D&D stuff, especially I'm thinking in particular the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Guide. I think he even did 2nd edition D&D Player's Guides and Dungeon Master's Guides. And all that is just very memorable for me from that era. I started playing D&D back in that era of the early mid-80s. I mean, closer to mid-80s, I think. I was probably maybe 9 or 10 years old when I first played basic D&D and then moved on to advanced D&D not too long after that. So that would have been about the mid-80s. So I just have fond memories of Jeff Easley's artwork in the D&D era, and so it's kind of cool to see TSR utilizing those guys to do this sort of historical artwork, because a lot of those guys I just associate with fantasy artwork. So to see Jeff Easley doing, a famous image of the British troops trying to hold the doors to Hougoumont closed against the French was really cool. So that sort of drew me to this version of the game. My experience playing La Bataille de la Moskva has interested me in doing other Napoleonic battles, and in particular doing Waterloo. So that was another reason that I looked for this game in particular. The reviews on it are generally mixed. The concerns of most wargamers are that the skirmisher rules are not particularly good. They kind of create these skirmishers that are impossible to kill, which confounds cavalry, the use of cavalry in the game. And you can't really have a Napoleonic warfare game that does not have good cavalry rules. Cavalry is one of the key components of Napoleonic warfare, in addition to your combined arms, infantry and artillery movements. So regardless of that, I still wanted to get a copy of the game. I still want to try the game. I think there's some people that have developed some various house rules to try and address some of the issues with the skirmisher units. So I can give those a try and see how this works at actually replicating a decent Waterloo experience. So inside the box, we've got rulebook, and this is a, again, TSR era rulebook, not exactly like most of the TSR era rulebooks that I've seen, which usually a lot of them are this black. They have this black cover on them, kind of printed on this newsprint stock type material, and this is not. This is good heavy paper, more reminiscent of Avalon Hill printing style of the time. And it doesn't have. It's just got a full illustration on the cover in black and white, as opposed to a sort of black print cover with white table of contents text on it. So a little bit different than some of the other TSR era SPI imprints. Although you can see the back has the black with the white text on it, which is very much TSR. And looks like that's got your table of contents on the back. So interesting choice there. So anyway, inside, like I said, heavy paper, a little bit different, but otherwise your typical SPI style rules with the different case numbers for your different chapters. One difference here is in the center. Looks like there's a deployment grid here, which shows where you're deploying various counters for each side, and it's got sort of a little instruction there stating, "Feel free to bust out the staples and take this out," which I think is not uncommon for TSR stuff. Just like the Rebel Sabers rulebook, for example, had all the charts and tables in the middle of the book, I believe with the intent of you're popping them out of the manual to use outside of the game, or to use outside of the manual, which to me just, says we're too cheap to print cardstock for this. So I think a lot of people would agree that the TSR SPI era was about cutting costs as much as they could to try and salvage some sort of value out of the company that they bought in a fire sale. And probably why the TSR SPI imprint didn't last for too many more years after that, although there were other factors than just TSR's mishandling of the SPI properties. Wargaming itself was going through some serious difficulties throughout that mid to late 80s period. For the maps, I'm going to lay these out on the floor like I've done for other games, but just to get a close look here, you can see all these are in this sort of yellowish and white, and some browns in there, but sort of yellow-brown color scheme. Not really colors that you associate with Belgium or France in that at that time of year. The battle was June 18th. You tend to think of things being a little greener in the French and Belgian countryside. Not really so much yellow and brown, but nonetheless, probably just commensurate with TSR's other baffling map color choices of this particular era. You've got these bright yellow map of Waterloo, or at least the streams are blue. So there's 4 maps. Like I said, I'll lay them out at the end of the video so we can take a look at them. A couple of player aid cards in here. Your shot combat results table looks suitably complicated, percentage ratios and so forth. This is a very interesting layout for a player aid card. First of all, it's blank on one side, which is rare. Usually you've got enough charts and tables in these kind of games to warrant using both sides. They are good heavy cardstock, but they're this weird sort of 8.5 by 11 sort of 1 3/4 fold over player aid card, which I've never seen before in any game. Usually most games, instead of doing a fold over like this, would just print the 3/4 info on the other side of the card, and then put some notes or something, or into the blank space. It seems to me like, in terms of printing expenses, that printing a 1 3/4 fold over would be a hell of a lot more expensive than just back printing your 1 8.5 by 11 sheet. But what do I know? I don't know the vagaries of the wargame printing or publishing industry in the mid 80s. So this is what we got. I got 2 of them here with just firepower and shot combat results table on it. So it would have been nicer if they had sequence of play type stuff on the card too. But what are you gonna do? Old ad here for Strategy and Tactics magazine. Send in your subscription form and get yourself a subscription, like some people may have done at the time when shortly before TSR bought SPI, may have signed up for that lifetime strategy and tactics subscription, and then TSR said, "No, we're not going to honor that. Sorry, if you paid for a lifetime subscription, you're not getting your money back." I think that also permanently alienated a lot of wargamers from ever buying anything from TSR again, which probably didn't help TSR's ability to sell wargames under the SPI imprint. Here's the counter sheets. Just like the Rebel Sabers counter sheets that I looked at, these are that sort of weird size, these fold over cards. So you get a not quite 8.5 by 11 sheet. It's a little bit wider. Not sure what the exact dimensions are, but when folded over, they're wider than an 8.5 by 11. But if you hold them this way, they're narrower than an 8.5 by 11. So I don't know what the actual dimensions are. But as you can see, also like all other counters from TSR in that era, side-mounted. Side-mounted counters must have been cheaper. That's all I can think. Because otherwise I don't know why you would ever do side-mounted counters. They just look terrible when you pull them out of the counter sheet. So I've got a good way, well, I don't know if good, maybe a better than nothing way of getting them out of there and trimming them. I just use one of these rotary cutters, which you can kind of get along that side and get rid of the side nib if you kind of angle it over a little bit. Get rid of the side nib without kind of taking a divot out of the side of the counter, which is what usually happens in the past, or what's happened in the past when I've tried to use like nail clippers or some other means of getting those side nibs off there. So first counter sheet, it's your French Army forces. Lots of French, naturally. The rest are get your Anglo-Allied army, so all the red counters here for the British. The green counters are the Netherlanders, which I guess I didn't realize how many Dutch were actually at the Battle of Waterloo. Down here, King's German Legion, and I guess that's another Anglo army. The Hanoverians, the Brunswickers, third counter sheet, Prussian army, in that sort of appropriate Prussian blue. And you got your two different blues here. You got the French and that sort of much lighter blue, and then the Prussians in this almost, it's not really navy blue, it's a little lighter than that, but almost a gray blue kind of color. And then assorted markers, Anglo-Allied markers, French markers, and there's the rest of the Prussians for your Allied army. There's the back, upside down. Interesting, that must be their square formations there, which, hey, why not? Square formation means square. So 3 counter sheets of actual units, and then there's 2 counter sheets in here of strength markers. So similar to your, I'm thinking of like Great Battles, the American Civil War, or whatever, you've got, you'll mark these off, mark step losses off or factor losses off with the strength markers. Indicate the strength units, so lots of those. I think the counter count for the game is 2,000 counters. Seems about right for these slightly larger counter sheets with 5 of them. And then I guess you know there's a lot of counters in a game if it comes with 2 counter trays. I believe there's 2 here. If I can pry them apart. Probably the first time they've been pulled apart since the game was bought, or since the game was published over 30 years ago. I think it was 83 when this came out. close. Yeah, so a couple of the older SPI TSR era counter trays. And for a second I thought there was only one cover, or one cover to it, but it looks like there's two of them. So, two covered counter trays. So you know you got a lot of counters if they're putting two counter trays in there for you. So, there we have the contents of the box. I will now lay the maps out and just do a quick follow-up video with that, showing the maps all in place. Alright, here's the maps for Wellington's victory laid out. I have quite enough room to fit my tripod along the wall to get this. I could do it lengthwise, but the map is actually, if I did it lengthwise, the map would look sideways on the counter. As it is, I'm already filming it at sort of an angle here where I can fit the camera in next to my shelves. I thought it was interesting, and you can see here the exact tables that are on those play aids are here on the map. You can see there you got the relative firepower table, the shot combat results table. So I thought that was interesting. You know, they put it on the map. Why do the expensive player aid cards? I suppose it may be because there's some scenarios that use only the northwest or northeast maps, in which case, yeah, you would want those available on cards, because otherwise, not only is the information replicated over there on the southwest map, it is also here on the southeast map. Southeast map also has at least it's got the terrain effects chart. Which is useful. And there's your sequence of play right on the map. So I'm actually a fan of tables on the maps. There's something sort of very classic about tables on the map. I know some people hate them. They think it looks cluttered or ugly. For me, there's just something that says classic wargaming about the big map laid out that's got tables all over it. So you've got your, I can find it here, I'm actually looking through the camera as opposed to at the map. Which, I don't know if it's, okay, there's LaHaye. So your different, various battlefield landmarks there. So then over here towards what would be the French left, there's La Belle Alliance. And then there on the French left, where the maps are sort of, I sort of sloppily laid them out there. They're not quite together. You can see Hougoumont, so which tells you that that's Waterloo. So this would be your line generally across here, from left to right. And again, very interesting color choice. I'm not sure why they went with a yellow and brown coloring, since you, when I can understand brown, I guess it was incredibly muddy after all the rainstorms when the battle was fought. But you know, the countryside in that region, very lush, very green. Not sure what that is there. Observation procedure. Morale tracks. Another sequence of play up there. So color-wise, very interesting. But, you know, not terrible. Certainly not quite the color dissonance of something like the terrible Swift Sword TSR map, which is atrocious looking. This is certainly a playable map, especially if you're using this background with blue counters or gray counters. They won't get lost in the terrain. Everything will stand out pretty well against this bright yellow and white. So anyway, there you have it. A look at the maps for Wellington's victory laid out. I kind of look forward to getting to this one. I may try and play it at the club after we finish La Bataille de la Moscova, just to see how Wellington's victory stacks up with Labatt. Everything that I've heard is that Labatt is the better system, but you know, I'm always for getting old classics to the table, even if the systems may not stack up to more refined systems that have come out since then. You know, they're still sort of part of gaming heritage, and so I look forward to trying old classics just as much as the new stuff.